Hello and welcome to another RTK video. Today I'm going to be breaking down something that we frequently have to help people with because it is a complicated matter, and that is building skaven armies to function well in multiplayer. Now please, we have done a tier list with 3 very good skaven experts, so if you want to hear their takes on individual units, please I'll be linked in the video description. If you like our content in general, a like and subscribe really does help us out as we try and bring content moving towards the end times and then 40k. But let's get right into this. So, skaven army composition, I think start off as to define, it is incredibly important. Skaven is a very tricky faction to play, it's one of the hardest to play. So it's important that we set ourselves up right, because mistakes in army composition can really leave us vulnerable to good players and quickly losing games. So we'll start straight through. We're going to start with our lords, and from that we'll discuss a bit about the hero options. Then we'll go discuss how to set up main bodies of skavens and armies, key tools, how you're using them. And then we'll discuss through some tech pieces and some pitfalls you can make when playing skaven. So let's start off at the lords. We have a fairly large lord selection here, and if you watch our tier list, you'll know that lots of them are pretty bad. So if I'm a new skaven player, what I encourage you to play is the humble grey seer. Now, this guy is really good. So why is he so good? Well, he comes equipped with a number of spells. You have 2 lords, you have Plague, and you have Ruin. What I recommend to anyone, if you're stuck on a hit caster, you don't know what lord to take, you bring this guy, Warp Lightning, Howling Warp Gale, Dread of 13th. Now I do this. Firstly, he's cheap, 700 gold. So if you get sniped, he can very quickly be brought back into the field again, so your army doesn't suffer the leadership penalty for too long, which is very important. Dread of 13th is an amazing spell for clearing infantry and just supporting your lines with the Storm Vermin summon. Warp Lightning is good, and you want to have Howling Warp Gale in any matchup where they have a flying unit, as it shuts them down, and that's the only way Skaven have a contest in the air, is to use Howling Warp Gale and then shoot them. So, if there's lots of flyers into something like Tzeentch, Warps and Scroll is a good item. The only other thing to really think about with this guy is if they don't have many missile pieces, so something like Vampire Counts, where you suffer a leadership penalty, the Screaming Bell is an excellent option. It gives him more HP, more resistance to magic, which can make him more survivable to spells, and it gives him a really good buff of leadership to your whole army. This has been my standard lord without the bell, and this I take into basically every matchup. Now, if you're saying that's boring and what other lords, there are a couple of options. Snickich, he's fine. I would not recommend though, because lord sniping itself is a risky strategy and he's incredibly squishy. Ikit is still good. Flensing Rune is really good, really amazing spell. His Doomwell is good. Brassor was good, he's just very expensive, so if you're unsure what to take, Ikit can be a bit of a trap, because if you lose him, you're never getting him back because he costs so much money. So I would always go with the bells, the regular grey seer on foot. Now, another option people like is to have Frotz on his mount. This is a good duelist. His summon is an incredibly strong ability. His anti-large bonus is really good, and his heal is solid. The key thing though, as a newer player of Frotz, is his 60 leadership. This means, despite him being tanky with his regeneration, if he gets in a blob fight, he can often run, and then you lose game of Skaven. So I tend to avoid Frot. I just have a very clear thing in mind, and would always say, if you're building a Skaven army, your lords of a Grey Seer or Ikit. Said, yes, game with both Snickich and Frot. Skrog is very fragile and quite expensive, and that's a bad combination with Skaven because it gives value to your opponent for killing your lord, and has the massive impact it has on Skaven because of it. So, moving to the heroes. An assassin can be a niche tech, but I would rarely bring him. Leave that there to help run through the build. There. Assassin is niche. I'd avoid the Packmaster, he's just a bit expensive. The Chieftain is a very interesting one. If I was a newer player, I'd strongly recommend putting a Chieftain in reserve with just Power Grab. This is really useful because if you see your lord is vulnerable to being killed, you can summon out the Chieftain, waddle him onto the point, and he just makes sure your army doesn't instantly dissolve. So the new player, I'd highly recommend having this guy in reserve. Now for spells. There's a lot of cool text you can do, and there are many experts who can help you out here. The Eshin Sorcerer, if you're bringing him, you bring Skitterleap, not. You always bring Warp Stars, and Brittlebone is an amazing single entity killer, especially stuff like Chore of Trains. It can be really cool. But this is quite a niche thing, and I would generally avoid that. As a newer player, I just say, take out the Warlock Engineer. Take in Bare Bones, give him Flensing Rune, an amazing spell, only seen on Icket otherwise, and Warp Lightning. Whereas if you bring, let's say, Snickitch, the Death Master, who is also quite good, and Frot. The Plague Priest is okay, but he's squishy and his spells require a bit more micro, so I'd avoid that normally. So if you are bringing a Vital Lord, as a new player, I recommend you to bring a Warlock Engineer. So, now building into the main body of the army. This is where we should discuss a common pitfall that befits new players, and it's bringing too many of the shiny toys. Your Teeth Breakers, Natabuos, Avalanche Mortars, and other shooting pieces. These are really good. They can do lots of damage, but they need to be protected. So you've got to make sure you get the balance right of not bringing too many. So where do we start? There are two paths for Skaven here. There is a Storm Vermin path where you can just go, not 8 Storm Vermin at people and say, can you kill this? And lots of factions can struggle. It's not how I prefer to play though, so I'm going to be bringing for you a more standard and traditional Skaven playstyle of Width. Now, why do we have Width as Skaven? Firstly, we don't have Cav, so Width enables us to control the battlefield with space instead of mobility. Secondly, it enables us to have layers, so when our front guys run away as they will, we have more behind them so we can keep delaying the enemy from getting on our good valuable pieces. And it's what we have. We've got lots of cheap bodies. So, start off every Skaven army. You'll go to a Skaven Slave Spears. These are very solid, good infantry. They're not good in the sense, but they do their job for what they're meant to do. They stick out the front and they absorb the first enemies. They don't get value often, but they buffer them and they allow your other units to do damage. My go-to is the Clan Rat Spears. They can get surprisingly good damage in, and they're just cheap. So this will be my go-to first 8 units on the roster. Now, here's where we can have some fun. So the next key essential from Skaven players is you've got to have enough mass. It's important to stop Cav running straight through your lines, do with monsters and SEs, and they're often your damage pieces in melee fights. So we've got two real options as Skaven play. You have Rat Ogres and Flayers. Now I'm a big Flayer enjoyer, and typically you see Flayers where you're expecting to be hit by infantry, and some light cavalry, stuff like Dark Riders and High Elf Reavers, because they don't have the AP to get through the high armor. Well, Rat Ogres are good for jumping on single entities and more elite units. Lower model count. So typically, I'd always recommend you have 1 or 2 of each in your starter. Put Rat Ogres in for this example. This is to prevent you getting rushed down early by people trying to aggress you and get onto your guns before you can get their value. If I was to put 2 Rat Ogres in start, it's still important you max out on your mass. So I put 2 Rat Ogres, 2 Flayers, and a Flayer ROR, a very good unit in reserve. This is an essential core for Skaven to function. My typical builds that I play are drop the Rat Ogres into reserve, and you can start 2 Flayers as well. That's something I commonly do. But the key thing is you've got to have a lot of mass, as you've got to keep something in and make sure you always have enough of this on the battlefield. Let's say we had the 3 Rat Ogres in the start for a good solid mass core. What are we looking at next? Well, the next thing is we want to often have cheap shooting. To any matchup with light armor, this is essential. Skaven Slave Stings are amazing because not only do they have a pretty solid damage output for their cost, they're very hard to shut down because they've got a wide formation, and if you rout them, they come back. Then they keep throwing their pebbles. So typically I would say you want to have at least 3 slingers, typically possibly 4. So now we still have a lot of gold left, and this is where you can start adding some spice to your main army. So typically when I play Skaven, I want to have 2 or 3 key units here. Your go-to weapon team is the Natabuos. This is because they're very hard to interact with, because they have Stalk and Snipe, and they've got really good damage output. So if you're ever confused on a weapon team, Natabuos are probably the way to go. Your next thing is often you want is to have some 360 shooting. This allows you to skirmish and poke early, and they end up functioning really well with your mobility pieces and mass in a late game to contest points. So you've got two options here. There's one combination where you go Night Runner Gutters, or take one poison and one regular as a combo. That works out really nicely. Or you take the Night Runner Slings. No, never take the slings, you take the throwing things. And these are a good way of just poking early, and they have really good damage output and are quite durable. The last piece that I often like to put in my armies is a Mutant Rat Ogre. This can be quite micro-intensive, but it does mean you can able to deal with mass, monsters like as War Sphinxes. This guy can go punch in the face, and it's really good for dealing with things that otherwise cause your Skaven roster a lot of issues. Typically, you then fill it up. I'd then try and get the 20 stacks where I have this width with 4 Skaven Slaves, 4 Spears, 4 Slingers, and 3 Rat Ogres. So if I was to recommend a build to anyone starting a Skaven, I'd probably end up cutting this, cutting one of these, putting one Storm Vermin in, because if you're newer, the Storm Vermin are a lot less micro, and that's the benefit of having a Storm Vermin in over the Clan Rats. Get an extra Storm Vermin in, bit more cheaping, got some good shooting, good damage, good mass in your starter, and a powerful unit to anchor your point. If I was being competitive, I'd drop that, and I'd put the Mutant Rat Ogre in instead. So, you have your wide Skaven army with your one elite piece of shooting. This is the key thing here. I've only given myself one unit I have to really defend, which makes my life a lot easier, makes it hard for my opponent to shut it down, and that enables me to actually get its value out. So, reserve. We've got our mass, we have our chieftain. So, typically we need to want to reserve. Eshin Triads are really good late game because they have stalk, they've got concealment bombs, and they're anti-large, so it can help contest that mobility fights with your Rat Ogres and Flayers. Typically, I like to have one Wolf Rat of poison, just as a Moby piece to go jump on routing units, help deal with cav and support my mass. And here's where I get a bit of fun. So you can often put a secondary weapon team in your reinforcements. Typically that is, for me, the Teeth Breakers, because they provide high damage output and can really defend your backline. Other options are you can bring in some more Slingers, or change it around. The key thing I say is, you can have one big shooting piece in the starter, like Natty Buboes or Avalanche Mortars. Another option is to diversify, and you drop 1, 2, 3, and you can actually get in a lot of globes. So there is an overwhelming, but I'd always say globes are the best unit to spam out, to clarify. Going back to our starter there. We are two. So typically here, I like to have the Teeth Breakers, really good damage output to come in the mid to late game. You can also have Warp Lightning Cannons, and Plague or Catapults are an amazing unit into lots of matchups, particularly the Undead, as they provide a really good leadership debuff, especially considering they also apply one for being artillery. And typically, if you're going to have more of a shooting piece, you can often feed 3 or 4 Plague or Catapults and defend them well. So if I'm running Catapults, I'll probably run 2 in the starter, 1 in reserve. I also summon to stuff like Dark Elves. Warp Lightning Cannons be good here. Typically, I like to finish this out with just a bit more infantry to make sure I always have that numbers coming through. Another Wolf Rat Poison. And probably drop that, and you end up getting a couple more light slingers in, because they're really important for skirmishing that early game. And in the late game, you want to have them come out to support your mass to help clean up the enemy and really capture the points. Because Skaven can have issues capturing the points late game, so you do want to plan for that. So, if I were giving a build to a new player, this is probably it. Skaven have a massive roster, so there's so many ways you can flex in with gutter runners, globes. You can take some other shooting pieces. You go more mass heavy. You can go more storm vermin and infantry heavy. But if I was to give an archetype of how you should be trying to play Skaven to the highest level, it'd be something around this. Now, the key message I would like to get across are, be moderate in your weapon teams. They're really cool, but they are also very squishy, and people know how to love them, people will kill them, and then you'll be sad, and that often costs people the game. Be sensible with your Lord. Your Lord is often a crux of a Skaven build. He has your magic. He holds your army together with his leadership, and if he dies, that can be game over. So always make sure to value your Lord. And make sure you have enough mass. Mass is crucial to how skaven play. You should always be summoning out mass. You should always try to resummon your mass and get it back in the pool. So yeah. If you enjoyed this and want to have our guides on other factions, please let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please do like and subscribe. And if you want to get high level skaven play from some of our many other experts, they'll do some replay reviews and help you with your army competition, please join our Discord and ask in there. We always love to have people come and hang out with us. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next one.